No one ever noticed the moment a man stopped believing in people, because disbelief doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles quietly, reinforced by years of disappointment, betrayal, and survival. By the time Nathaniel Reed reached 40, he had mastered the art of expecting nothing from anyone. Because expectation, he believed, was the fastest path to being disappointed. Nathaniel was the CEO of Reedwell Therapeutics, a pharmaceutical empire valued at more than $11 billion. His success was documented in headlines, interviews, and annual reports. But none of those captured the emptiness that followed him home each night into a penthouse built of glass, steel, and silence. Overlooking the city skyline, every object in his home screamed wealth, yet nothing whispered comfort. The furniture existed for appearance, not rest. The arts existed for value, not feeling. Nathaniel often stood at his window late at night, watching thousands of lives moving below, feeling strangely separate from all of them. That separation began in childhood. His father had been a brilliant businessman and a ruthless realist, a man who taught lessons with sharp words and colder examples. Trust is weakness, his father used to say. Give people power over you, and they will use it without mercy. Nathaniel absorbed those lessons deeply. He learned to protect himself with contracts, distance, and control. He gave to charities only through foundations and legal teams. He helped causes, not people. People were unpredictable. Systems were safer. On a January morning sharpened by winter wind, Nathaniel moved through the underground station with practiced urgency. His phone vibrated constantly with alerts from investors, board members, and executives demanding immediate decisions. His assistant struggled to keep pace as they hurried toward an emergency meeting. Then something interrupted the rhythm of his certainty. Near a tiled wall sat a woman wrapped in a thin coat that did little to fight the cold. In her arms slept a small child, curled tightly, as if instinctively trying to disappear into safety. A piece of cardboard rested beside them, with uneven letters written in black marker. Single motor on lost or home. Anything helps. Nathaniel's feet slowed before his mind caught up. He had seen scenes like this countless times, but something about this one refused to let him pass. The woman noticed him immediately and spoke first, her voice low and apologetic. She said they could move if they were in the way. She apologized for existing in a space meant for people rushing toward important lives. That apology struck Nathaniel harder than any demand ever had. He stopped completely, ignoring the impatient reminder from his assistant. Something unfamiliar tightened in his chest as he knelt down, his expensive coat brushing against the cold station floor. Her name was Eliza, and her daughter was named Grace. Grace was 6 years old, sleeping deeply despite the noise, trusting fully in the arms holding her. Eliza's grip never loosened, even as she spoke, as if letting go meant losing everything. Nathaniel studied Eliza's face and saw exhaustion layered over intelligence. This was not someone careless with life. This was someone worn down by it. When he asked how long they had been there, her eyes dropped as she answered softly, 5 months. 5 months of cold floors, borrowed warmth, and constant uncertainty for a child who should have known only stability. Nathaniel felt something fracture inside him, a belief he had guarded carefully for decades beginning to crack. His father's voice echoed sharply in his mind, warning him about desperation and manipulation. Yet another thought rose louder than fear. What if I'm wrong? What if I've been wrong my entire life? Without fully understanding why, Nathaniel reached into his wallet and pulled out a black card with no preset limit. He held it between them calmly, deliberately, as if offering a test rather than charity. Eliza stared at it in disbelief, instinctively pulling her daughter closer. Nathaniel explained slowly. 24 hours. No restrictions, no expectations, no questions. The card trembled in her hands as she accepted it. She asked why he would do something like this. Nathaniel looked at the sleeping child and answered honestly, because I want to see what someone with nothing chooses when given everything. He stood before doubt could reclaim him and told her he would return the next morning. Same place, same time. As he walked away, his father's warnings followed him, sharp and certain. That night, Nathaniel stood alone in his penthouse, watching the city lights flicker beneath him. He refreshed his banking app repeatedly, waiting for proof that his father had been right all along. Hours passed with no activity. Midnight came and went. Then dawn approached, and finally a notification appeared. Small in amount, but enormous in consequence. Signaling the beginning of a truth Nathaniel was not prepared to face. Nathaniel did not sleep that night. He stood by the window as the city slowly dimmed and brightened again, his phone never leaving his hand. Every vibration made his heart tighten, expecting excess, recklessness, or confirmation of everything his father had warned him about. The first charge appeared just after dawn, a small amount from a neighborhood pharmacy. Nathaniel stared at the number, confused by how modest it was. Then another followed, slightly higher, from a grocery store not far from the station. There were no luxury hotels, no designer boutiques, no extravagant splurges. The pattern forming on his screen was quiet, restrained, almost careful, and that unsettled him more than recklessness would have. Unavleto wait. Nathaniel canceled his morning meetings without explanation and returned to the station earlier than planned. He told his driver to stop several blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, letting the cold air sharpen his thoughts. Eliza was still there, but the scene had shifted. Grace was awake now, bundled in a new winter coat that fit her small frame perfectly. Her shoes were clean and sturdy, and she clutched a stuffed rabbit with fierce affection. Eliza saw Nathaniel approaching and stood quickly, panic flashing across her face as she held the card out with shaking hands. She began explaining before he could speak, saying she planned to return it and only bought what was absolutely necessary. Nathaniel raised a hand gently, asking her to slow down. He knelt again, eye level with her, and asked what she had bought. Eliza hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out several crumpled receipts. He read them silently, his throat tightening with each line. Children's clothing, warm boots, socks, cold medicine, simple groceries. Every purchase centered around Grace, with nothing indulgent and nothing unnecessary. Then he noticed one line that made him pause completely. A donation to a local shelter, not a large amount, but meaningful. Money she could have kept and desperately needed. Nathaniel looked up slowly, disbelief written openly on his face. "You donated money," he said quietly. Eliza nodded, embarrassed. She explained that the shelter had helped them when it could, and she wanted to help someone else, if she had even a little extra. Something inside Nathaniel collapsed entirely. The belief that desperation erased morality. The certainty that kindness disappeared when survival was threatened. All of it crumbled under the weight of a receipt printed on thin paper. "You didn't buy anything for yourself," he said. Eliza shook her head. "My daughter comes first. She always will. I can endure almost anything if she doesn't have to." Nathaniel looked at Grace, sitting on the cold floor, coloring with quiet concentration, and felt a shame deeper than any professional failure. He realized this woman, with nothing, possessed more integrity than many people he had paid millions to trust. "Come with me," he said suddenly, the words escaping before hesitation could stop them. "Somewhere warm, somewhere safe, somewhere you don't have to keep apologizing for existing." Fear flickered in Elisa's eyes, but exhaustion won over suspicion. After a long moment, she nodded. Nathaniel booked a hotel suite nearby, neutral and quiet. Not his penthouse, a place that felt less like power and more like shelter. Grace ran inside, laughing when they arrived, touching everything with wonder. Eliza stood frozen in the doorway until Nathaniel assured her it was real and that there were no conditions attached. That night, Nathaniel made calls he had avoided his entire life, not to lawyers or public relations teams, but to social workers, housing advocates, and education coordinators who knew how to rebuild lives rather than manage reputations. Doors opened quickly when he spoke, but for the first time his name was used to help rather than control. By morning, real plans existed instead of vague promises. He returned early with coffee and breakfast, finding Elisa Colmore, sitting straighter, Grace drawing at the table with her stuffed rabbit nearby. Something about the room felt lighter, as if fear had loosened its grip. Nathaniel laid out the plan carefully. Temporary housing leading to permanent stability. Job training suited to Eliza's background. Healthcare access, school enrollment for Grace. Not rescue, but structure. Elisa listened in silence, tears slipping down her face, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming realization that survival might finally give way to living. Eliza's voice trembled when she finally spoke, asking why he would do all of this for someone he had never met before. Nathaniel searched for a logical answer, but realized none existed. The truth was simpler and harder to explain than any business decision he had ever made. He told her she reminded him that people were more than transactions, more than risks to be managed. He admitted he had spent decades believing compassion was weakness, only to discover it was the strongest force he had ever encountered. That afternoon, Eliza and Grace moved into a small furnished apartment, arranged through one of the housing advocates Nathaniel contacted. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, warm, and quiet, with walls that didn't echo fear and a door that locked from the inside. Grace explored every corner with delight, opening cabinets, testing light switches, laughing freely in a way she hadn't in months. Elisa stood in the middle of the living room, hands covering her mouth, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar feeling of safety. Over the following weeks, routines replaced chaos. Grace enrolled in school and came home each day with stories, drawings, and friendships. Eliza attended job training classes, rediscovering confidence she thought hardship had permanently erased. Nathaniel visited often, not as a savior but as a steady presence. He helped assemble furniture, attended school events, and listened more than he spoke. In those quiet moments, he felt more fulfilled than any boardroom victory had ever made him feel. One evening, after Grace fell asleep in her own bed for the first time, Eliza returned the black card with careful hands. She thanked him again, her voice steadier now, no longer shaped by desperation. Nathaniel gently pressed the card back into her palm, explaining it was for emergencies only, a reminder that she no longer had to face uncertainty alone. Trust, he realized, was not blind when it was earned. Months passed and the changes held. Eliza secured stable employment, with benefits. Grace thrived in school, her laughter returning naturally. Instead of cautiously, their lives no longer revolved around survival, but around possibility. Nathaniel's world shifted quietly alongside theirs. He still led his company, still made decisions that affected thousands, but his priorities had realigned. Success without humanity no longer satisfied him. He began redirecting resources toward programs that rebuilt lives rather than polished images. His philanthropy became personal, grounded in presence instead of paperwork, guided by empathy instead of fear. One afternoon, watching Grace play in a small park near their apartment, Nathaniel realized how profoundly wrong his father had been. Desperation had not created greed. It had revealed character. Eliza sat beside him, watching her daughter run freely, and spoke about the future with confidence. Instead of hesitation, she talked about goals, education, and stability as certainties rather than distant dreams. Nathaniel listened, understanding that the most powerful transformation was not financial but emotional. Hope, once restored, reshaped everything it touched. The black card was never about money. It was a mirror, reflecting the truth about who people choose to be when fear loosens its grip. A man who believed humanity was broken learned that kindness multiplied when trusted. A mother who had lost everything proved that dignity survived even in the coldest places. Their lives intersected because one man paused instead of passing by, and one woman chose integrity over impulse when no one was watching. The city continued moving, unaware of the quiet story unfolding within it. But beneath the noise, something lasting had taken root. Nathaniel no longer believed trust was a mistake. He understood it was a risk worth taking, the kind that reshaped futures instead of protecting emptiness. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is a single moment of belief, offered without conditions and received with grace.